As I can tell, I think we are live. So hello, thank you very much for coming to this webinar. I really appreciate it. We are going to be hanging out for a little bit just as more people come on. I know we're expecting a good number of people, so I want to give it a little bit of time so that we can have everybody jump in. But yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. On with me is a friend of mine, another developer evangelist at Corda. His name is Peter Lee. My name is David Awad. We're going to be giving you guys basically an introduction to Corda, and we're probably gonna really get started in 1 or 2 minutes, something like that, just as people start putting in. So while we kind of wait for that, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So, like I said, I'm a developer evangelist here at R3, and primarily I work on engaging the developer community. We have a lot of different ways that people are able to reach out to us. We have our Slack community. We run office hours twice a week in 2 different time zones. We also have a massive bevy of Stack Overflow questions thrown our way from developers who are trying to build interesting use cases. So we're usually out there helping them out. And of course, we also write the best tweets out there. So we have a lot of stuff we end up working on, and it's a really good time. I'm very lucky to have the team that I do. So we end up kind of, I want to say on average, just engaging with all kinds of different content. We write blog posts all the time. I highly recommend if you are interested, checking out the Corda Medium blog. We have a lot of fun content on there. More recently, another developer evangelist on our team, Ashutosh, put out some content around using Corda with Docker and Docker Compose, which has been a very fun kind of problem that I know a lot of people are really interested in solving. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of wait on the slides instead of hanging out and trying to come up with ways to fill the space. So by all means, thank you again for coming, and we'll just wait it out for another minute or so. So for those of you who are just joining, we're just waiting a little bit for a few more people to jump in. Hopefully, hopefully we'll get to a few more people. Another one of my colleagues who's here with us as well, Peter Lee, is gonna send me a message when I've got enough people, and we'll just get started by 2:03 or so. And once we're all set, we'll start going. It should be a fun, pretty easy introduction to Corda. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And yeah, that's basically it. So I'll get started. Just got the go ahead. All right. So you're here for an introduction to Corda. Like I said, thank you so much for coming. So we'll start with the basics, right? I've already introduced myself and Peter, and we're going to be here with you for the next half an hour or so. But if you ever have more questions that we're not able to get to here, I would highly recommend all the things we have here, right? The basics. We have a public developer Slack you can sign up for on slack.corda.net. You can, of course, check out the Corda docs, and we have a new developer training site you can also visit. The Corda source code, of course, is available online as well. And if you ever want to email us with questions about any of these things, you can find us over email using the email devrel@r3.com. So, one last thing to mention on our Twitter, we are at Corda Blockchain at inside_R3. And by all means, feel free to use the hashtag Corda and R3. All right. So, let's just start with the basics, right? So at R3, we really believe that distributed ledger technology reduces cost and time to market for prototyping blockchain solutions while increasing the speed of business, right? We build a really robust blockchain solution that you can use in a lot of different contexts, and we have some really great developer samples that we can kind of talk about after this is over. If you want to contact us, and we'll kind of walk you through the different ideas we see for use cases around this, and a lot of them kind of developed around the basic problems that come with what the original blockchain solutions out there were doing. So when you think about it, right, blockchain 1.0 came with a few fundamental kind of problems, right? There wasn't a built-in notion of identity. There wasn't a built-in notion of privacy per se, and there was not there certainly was not speed to it, and it didn't allow you to integrate it with other tools. My apologies for that end there. So we kind of realized a lot of these things and started coming up with ideas for how to improve that, which is how we ended up at Corda. And so Corda is, you know, the way we like to describe it, it really is kind of the blockchain for business. And what we mean about that by that is that it's sort of the first platform built that specifically offers privacy, scalability, and interoperability built in, right? It's applicable to pretty much any industry. It's a robust but generic set of abstractions. So you can use, you know, you can use it for anything. In our case, you know, we've had a lot of adoption in one of the most highly regulated industries in the world, but you can apply it in kind of any area of commerce that you're interested in, which is really nice. As long as you are able to represent the kind of abstractions you want to track digitally, you won't have any problems using Corda to do it. And you know, of course, we have a lot of really good friends across the industry, and you know, the best benefits from using Corda or another blockchain solution come in when you have adoption across a network of peers that you want to collaborate with, right? And you know, of course, we're open source. You can find us online at github.com/Korda/Korda. So, all that being said, I kind of want to jump into the timeline here. We won't go too far into this, but we sort of you know, back in 2014, we kind of had our first roundtable, and we had about 8 banks who were chatting with us to kind of understand blockchain and see how they could make use of it. Then we end up building a partnership a little while later, a year later, to kind of explore building and delivering distributed ledger technologies for global financial markets. We end up building the consortium, and by the end of that year, we had had about 40 banks that were a part of it. Then we have the sort of, you know, a good bit later, almost a year later, we end up with the Corda open source release, and we, you know, since then have been building newer and more improved releases of Corda and Corda Enterprise based on community feedback and finding out where the real bottlenecks are for the developer community and listening to you guys and what problems you've had. And so we continue to kind of build our ecosystem of, you know, trade associations, regulators, tech companies, services, and just building a really fun kind of collaboration between a lot of different entities that really care about, you know, innovating and using blockchain for more effective tools when it comes to the industry, and collaborating together on representing assets and business resources digitally. So, you know, like I said, we're very lucky. We've had a lot of really different kinds of companies that we've gotten to work with, and we've had a lot of good, you know, partnerships, whether it's, you know, wealth funds, SMEs, corporations. We have central banks, legal institutions, and you know, infrastructure and technology providers, along with delivery partners. And it's a really fun, you know, problem space to be in. And you know, you as a developer are able to kind of leverage this when it comes to integrating into the R3 ecosystem and finding ways to digitally represent your contracts and business relationships with all of these entities. And of course, you know, you have the ability to use Cord apps for representing pretty much anything you can imagine. So I'll start getting more rigorous about what I mean by that in a little bit. But these are sort of the basics that we have a really great network of banks out there that we've gotten to chat with and work together with problems on. So so the way we think about Corda, long story short, we kind of outlined those problems earlier. We care about strong identity being built into the platform with while also including privacy. And what we mean by that is that if let's say A, B, and C are in a Corda network, you know, you can do business with between A and B without C having to find that out, which you run up against in more conventional blockchain solutions. But you also have strong confidence in the actual identities of the party involved. But the blockchain system itself does not publish every transaction to every participant. And of course, we think a lot about performance and scalability just in general, as any distributed systems software vendor would. And we are definitely the most scalable tool that exists for this in this space. Global interoperability when it comes to the massive network of institutions we've gotten to talk to. We're open source, right? And we have an open network foundation as well. And using Corda, you're able to achieve the usual critical use cases for blockchain, which is consensus, right? And that's what it's all about, being able to kind of digitally represent trust among different entities in a way that is unshakable after it's been established. So Corda, long story short, is a permissioned network. It operates on a peer-to-peer communication basis, need-to-know basis as well, right? So in just this example here, right, it's sort of a conventional example. You could be the Colorado River Authority, and if you want to represent, let's say, some smart contract or a loan that you might have with Titan Technology Partners, each of the nodes on here in this graph is really one of these parties running their own Corda node and then making sure that it's able to connect to the other parties in the network. And you see over in the top left here, we also have notary pools. This is not fundamentally different software. These are also Corda nodes. You can have one or many notaries that just work together to make sure that your transactions are valid as you're making them. So you as the Colorado River Authority, if you and Titan Technology Partners both have Corda nodes and you both know where the notaries are, then you can issue some form of transaction for representing any kind of fungible asset between you and the Titan Technology Partners. And the notary pool exists to kind of authorize those transactions as you go. This is sort of the conventional production deployment of a series of Corda nodes among a group of participants that want to kind of collaborate together in a meaningful way. So hopefully that makes sense. You know, Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Peter will be there to back you up. So to give a little bit more detail specifically on what's happening within the Corda network, we have this fun idea of an identity manager or a doorman that also offers a network map. So within the identity manager and network map, it keeps kind of a registry or a phone book of all of the nodes that exist within the network. And so there are these notary operators that exist out there as well that kind of authorize the transactions that are happening between all of these Corda and Corda Enterprise nodes that really that offer you kind of a robust kind of collection of services that you can leverage when it comes to actually running your Corda network. So this beautiful lava textured block is our rendition of a Corda node. And the Corda nodes are nice because once you've used the abstractions I'm going to tell you about in a minute, once you have the Corda abstractions represented as far as the information you care about sharing, you are essentially good. The Corda node itself will abstract away the problems of messaging, concurrency, storage, disaster recovery, peer discovery, key management, data distribution, and many other things, right? So Corda does a whole lot of the hard work for you. And what we're showing you here is kind of the basics. Your business logic, as they call it, runs through flows. Within Corda, there are three key abstractions to understand. Just to build our model up from first principles in terms of how we think about normal objects in the regular world, right? There are objects themselves. There are ways that those objects can be acted upon, and then there are flows to trigger the actions that are valid on those objects, right? So when we say things, we really mean states, to use the Corda terminology. And when we refer to the different operations that can be done to those objects, that is what contracts encode in Corda terminology. And so if I want to act or trigger a set of actions that involve a state or create a transaction on the blockchain, I might use a flow to then create or modify a state according to the rules outlined in a contract. Now that sounds like a lot, and we're going to break that down in a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of introduce you to that terminology right from the get-go so that this starts to make more sense. So now you can start to see that if I'm going to run a flow or I'm going to perform an operation or a set of operations on an asset that I want to be tracked, now the names of these flows start to make more sense. The create mortgage flow creates a transaction that produces a state in the Corda terminology, and that state will be validated according to the rules outlined in a contract for when a mortgage is created, right? So you might have a mortgage state, a contract outlining what can happen to a mortgage. Maybe a mortgage can be issued, a mortgage can have money paid on it, a mortgage can be disbursed, right? So these are the different kinds of concepts that go into how the mortgage can be modified. And then you start to see that creating a mortgage flow is the process of creating a transaction that instantiates a flow or a mortgage that is specified according to a series of rules that you can program into your contracts. So all of that being to say that when you run your flows, what you are doing is creating transactions or blocks on the blockchain. And those kind of turn into or manifest into ledger updates, and that's where this whole thing starts to kind of piece together. And to get back to this kind of model here, the notaries in our network here fulfill a few kind of critical roles, right? A notary cluster to start is really just a group of Corda nodes where you have told those Corda nodes, we need you to be notary. So those Corda nodes will run, and they will know that they are notaries, and they'll have sort of three jobs, right? The first is that notary clusters prevent double spends. Long story short, if you were only running three computers between three people and they weren't validating their transactions, it would be possible for a malicious party to start falsifying their transactions, right? The other job that notaries have is they operate as time stamping authorities, right? I'm sure you can imagine many time sensitive transactions. So if a transaction includes a time window, this notary can enforce that time boundary on the validity of a particular transaction. In addition, notary clusters also can validate the transactions themselves, right? Depending on how you architect your Cord app and whether you want to use notarization. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that, and you can see that in the notary documentation, but we won't go into it here. So just to kind of bring all this home, you can imagine something like this where there's Titan Technology and then Acme International and a third party and a notary pool where, let's say, Titan Technology wishes to sell a car that it has in its private vault, right? Where a vault is just the term we use for the collection of your private facts, right? So Titan Technology starts out with a Camaro in its state. And then on the other side, Acme International starts out with cash in its vault. These are both represented as states within a vault that represent the assets that each of these entities owns. And so one transaction might be that the Camaro will be sold for money, right? Simple enough. The car is sold, a flow is triggered through which the car state changes ownership. A ledger update happens to an already existing private fact or state. That state is consumed, and then it is updated, and an output state comes out with both the cash and the Camaro. So now Titan Technology has the cash, Acme has the Camaro. The flow is notarized, right? Or rather, the transaction is notarized within the flow. And then on the other side, both of these parties have successfully used a blockchain to exchange value, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much everything. I hope this made sense. It's worth mentioning that we're going to be doing a bootcamp workshop. This one will be with me and Peter as well. On June 11th, we're just going to be doing the basics of implementing a Cord app. We'll have a Corda accounts feature workshop on June 18th. We have a token SDK workshop on June 25th, and we're going to be running them 4 times each day. at 2 p.m. in London, New York, Mumbai, and 10 a.m. in Hong Kong time zone. So, highly recommend taking a look at those if you're interested in really getting your hands dirty. This sounds like it's a lot going on, but these notions of states, contracts, and flows start to become really intuitive when you start to think about the chord apps themselves and take a look at some of the examples. And if you're interested to prepare for that first boot camp, I would highly recommend just taking a look at our boot camp Corda app. It has the solutions in there as well. Just make sure you have Java 1.8 and IntelliJ so that you're ready to go. And I think that is everything. So I wanted to thank you guys for your time once again. I hope this was helpful for you. By all means, feel free to reach us online. You saw our emails at the beginning. Sign up for the public Slack. You can find me, Peter, and other members of the DevRel team. Here's the contact information for all of our headquarters, as well as our LinkedIn and Twitter. So yeah, feel free to visit r3.com or Korda.net or send us an email or just reach out. We love to hear from people and take feedback, and we try really hard to make sure that we give developers a good experience and make sure that we're supporting them the right way. So it'd be good to hear from you guys, and we appreciate your time.
So actually, David, there's a question kicking earlier asking like, what's the benefit of using a Docker? So do you mind to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So the benefits of using Docker, there's a bunch. So the short answer is that Docker is really nice because it abstracts away a lot of the sort of quote unquote runtime problems. The nice thing about a Docker container is that a Docker container is sort of like what a process was, or what processes should have been earlier on. What people in the DevOps community started to realize after a while was that as they were writing software that was more and more complex, more customizable, required more information on startup, people were starting to realize that if you tried to port your applications from one machine to another, or even worse, if you tried to port your application from the same operating system between different releases, you would run into all kinds of issues. And so Docker exists as kind of a VHS tape that you can stick into any VHS player. And what I mean is that once you know how your Dockerized application works, or rather, once you know how your application works, whatever software you've written, you can then specify a Docker file that outlines exactly what this software needs to work. For example, if you look at some of the Corda Docker images, you'll see that the Corda software extends from the Docker images of certain Java distributions. And we do that because then Docker is the one that takes upon the responsibility of configuring the software as outlined by the Docker file. So the Docker file basically says, here's what I need for my process to work. And then I can give that Docker file to any operating system that is running Docker with the same CPU architecture. That's a big asterisk on that, but hopefully you won't run into that kind of problem. But you can run any Docker container on any machine that has the same CPU architecture and can be relatively confident that it will work the way you expect on any machine that supports Docker, which is why I use that kind of VHS tape analogy, where you can take that VHS tape and stick it into any VHS player. It's kind of the PowerPoint. Any other questions, Peter? Are we all good?
I think we are good. I just trying to answer a question on the chat, but I guess you can talk about it. The question is about where can we deploy your Core app? I was just about to type it up, but feel free to answer that question.
So our solutions engineers have a lot of really good guides. You can do all the basics, right? I mean, we provide the Corda executables to you. So it really just depends on what you want to do with it, right? So our solutions engineers have guides for all the major cloud providers. You can find that in the docs, or if you want to message us on Slack after this, we support AWS, GCP, Azure, all the places where you might want to run this. You could even, if you wanted to, run them on Raspberry Pis outside of your house, although I don't recommend it. So you shouldn't have too many problems trying to get Corda to run pretty much anywhere you want it to. But if you do, definitely reach out to us and let us know. We might be able to help you out with that.
I can also answer sort of answer that question from a different perspective. So for our public network, we have the TCN, which is called the Korda network. So that's most likely most our client will choose to deploy their nodes in a like a very global network that they can interact with their customers or clients on the global network. And also for our developers, like you guys, we also have our testnet, so you can deploy your Korda apps on a testnet, so you can test for free. So currently, our latest statistic on our testnet, we have roughly 5,000 nodes up in the test network. So that means that those are our actual like active developers in the community. So I hope you guys can join us sooner or later. So I hope see you guys there. Cool. And I guess that's oh, I see another question. So why would I use Corda instead of Ethereum? So I can also take that question if you don't mind, David.
Yeah, yeah, go
So
for it.
sure. So we are a business-focused sort of like platform. We primarily try to mimic the business frictions, and we focus our block DLT technology in the private permissioned structure. So basically, with the difference between Corda and Ethereum is a public blockchain network that's doing consensus and other sort of um, communication on a on the public basis. That means all your information are even though they are encrypted, but they are still broadcast to external. So for us, if going back to the recording, you're gonna see one of the slide that Corda is a point-to-point, a peer-to-peer permission network. That means your information is only shared with your counterparty. That means, okay, yes, thanks, David. So whenever Tecton Technology Partners is sending a transaction or a communication with base trans group, it's only between them. And the only participating party gonna know that transaction. So that said, it doesn't mean that we're gonna leave the authority out of the conversation. We also have our signature structured at the observer system. So that means Titan Technology Partners and base transaction corps, they can doing peer-to-peer transaction, but they can have Colorado River Authority as an observer. So that means all the transaction is going through the Colorado River Authority, but it's not actually stored in their database. That's but like whenever they want to do auditing, all the transaction record is there. So that's the primary difference, and why like we favor Corda over Ethereum, because it's a peer-to-peer network and we focus security to the highest level. Yeah, thanks. I got to sum up. Thank you, guys. So, any more questions? And also, oh, David, roll back to the second to the last slide. So, show them our future events. Oh no, not this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we have a with all everybody anticipating the accounts and the token workshop, yeah, is finally here. We have them on June 18th and June 25th. And on June 11th, we just gonna rolling our standard 2 hour and a 2 hour and a half, 3 hours boot camp. That's the workshop that we used to deliver in person, but now we're gonna compress them, and then it's primarily gonna do live coding, because we just deliver our Corda one-on-one to you guys here. And for that one, it's just gonna be straight to the code, straight to the code.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
All right. I don't see any question coming. It's 28. It's 2:28. I guess we can give everybody 2 minutes back.
2 minutes back. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope it was informative for you. As always, feel free to reach out to us. We don't bite, and we're very happy to talk to people and just learn right along with you on the quest to, making the world better through blockchain.
All right. Thank you, everyone.